Welcome to Noble Warrior. My name is CK Lin. This is where I interview entrepreneurs and practitioners about how they master their mind and body to pursue a life of greater purpose, joy, and success. Today's episode, we have the executive in residence for AI and HI at the Society for Human Resource Management. She's the co-founder and partner for Narimia Collective at an early stage venture fund. She's co-founder of Transformative Tech, the largest global ecosystem for founders, investors who are building technology for human flourishing. She's on a mission to create a future where technology serves as a catalyst for deeper human connection and actualization. Please welcome Nichol Bradford.
Thank you.
So Nichol, I'm so glad that you're here. In Honorable Warrior, we talk a lot about, well, the source of our superpower often emerges from our deepest wounds. So Nichol, consider your profound commitment to leverage technology to foster human connection and empowerment. I'm curious to learn a little bit more about your human journey. Can you recall the first moment where you felt truly lonely and disempowered, and how did that shape your commitment to help humans connect and actualize better?
Did you just ask me about my inner wound?
Well, you did share that in your Ignite.
No. I don't have a problem. I'm just teasing. One of the beautiful things about growth communities is that, we all sort of acknowledge that all of us are, having these human experiences, and that comes with a lot of different ways to do that. And so I love that it's like first question, and it's like, so. And I would say, and I know, you've been to the conference, and so you've heard me talk about this before, but I think, when I sort of like look back across the journey of my life, a big chunk of it really was, I felt for most of my life profoundly alone and very lonely. And I was working in China, and then I went on a meditation retreat, and I felt the web of life. I felt connected, and without knowing, I didn't know what that was. I just, for the first time in my life, felt deeply, truly, completely connected, and that, set me on a on a completely different life path. And I changed my whole life, and I moved to the Bay and started Transformative Tech and a bunch of other things, towards, creating really connection.
It's beautiful. And so for most people who have touched on those type of experience, they either, it changed their life. They either end up chasing it, right? Oh, let me keep going back to meditation retreats or ayahuasca journeys, or whatever the case may be. Or let me actually shift my professional endeavors to bring more of that into the world. So I'm curious, like, how has that been shifting? Because you had a moment, and then what happens after? You said, I'm gonna shift and move to San Francisco, and did you touch more of those moments? Is it more, as your co-founder, Jeffrey Martin would say, persistent, what is it, fundamental well-being? There you go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess there's sort of like the outside, there's the outer journey, and then there's sort of what the inner journey is. And so, on the outer journey, fundamentally, I have always been a believer in science and technology. And I, grew up, my father was a plumber, a little black girl from Houston, Texas, and I grew up watching Star Trek and seeing a world where humanity, for the most part, was on the same page, and we cleaned up our home world, and we were in the business of exploration and helping other people. And it was a meritocracy, all races, all species. And, as someone in the 70s growing up in Texas, where race was a really big subject, um, it just, it was sort of like, the future, science and technology. It makes sense. And so I always had an orientation towards science, and I've always had a love of technology. But what I saw in China working on World of Warcraft before I had my experience is I saw families playing together, friends playing together. You know, it's like a video game. 70% of the people who play games are playing with other people. They're not playing alone. It's not a solo endeavor. And so I actually saw, a lot of goodness on the back end. And so I was already a believer that technology can enable and empower us. And so when I tasted the web of life, the real question for me was like, how do we use technology to make that experience available to all? And that's like a really big bucket. But then you sort of get into the nitty gritty of what that actually looks like. But that was on the outside that I already believed in science and technology and people. I believe in people. So I already believed in humans. I already believed in science. I already believed in technology. And so it's just sort of like if we can use the technology and the science to understand ourselves a bit more, to be more connected, then we could solve our problems. So that was kind of my orientation. Then on the inside, it was, becoming someone who had the ability and the capacity to become, more and more connected to myself and to others. And so that's that's the journey, whatever we call it, whether it's meditation or medicine or, you know, transcranial brain stimulation, like however we're doing it, that's what the longing is for. We have a deep longing for ourselves. We have a deep longing for one another.
So the follow-up question is a little bit of paradoxical because some people see technology actually separates us from our innate intelligence. And I know it's not your point of view. Your point of view is how do we use technology to enhance, augment this innate intelligence. So where is the balance, right, of using it to enhance versus to replace? Because some people, again, I'm using another metaphor. Oh, AI is going to take over and because it's going to help, replace our thinking ability versus my perspective. I believe this is your perspective too. Well, for those that you use it well, you can actually help us to be even more human, bring out the human ingenuity, the creativity, so we don't have to do the low grade level stuff. Anyways,
Mhm.
without digressing too much, how do you find
Yeah.
that balance between using technology to find the body's innate intelligence versus displace it and supplement?
Yeah, specifically around AI, there's a lot of fear and anxiety out there. And and I get it, I totally get it. A lot of the people who are expressing it the most, a lot of people haven't actually used it. Like when you sort of like look across the US, a lot of people haven't actually used it in a way that they recognize. So if you've been if you've been using Google, you've been using AI. you know, it just doesn't um it just doesn't do your work for you. But if you've been using Google, if you Google, you're using AI. Um, and so, you know, I was looking at an interesting study that Sherm just did, where an HR person, and they help with workforce planning, right? That's a big part of what an HR person does. The ones who work in companies uh, that have started using it, so not AI companies, but companies that are using AI, especially generative AI, they're 60 times more likely to believe that um, it's job enhancing and expanding than job replacing. And it's from exposure. So what that looks like for the average person is that, you start to play with it and then you start to think, oh, I wonder if I could do this with it. I wonder if I could do that with it. And then it's sort of like this exposure leads to curiosity. Curiosity leads to a level of fluency. And then, we're all at the starting mark with this. I think one of the things that scares people so much is the speed, because, where it took us to go from like floppy disks, um, and not the hard ones, the soft ones, to now, like that took 20 years. But this, if you just were looking at Sora the other day, even though all this stands on a decade or more of work, really, it didn't just happen. It just looks like it just happened. Um, you know, the text to video generation in 18 months is like, it's just the timelines are shorter. Um, so I get the fear. Um, the challenge or the problem with the fear is that this isn't going away. Like it's not going away. But the only way we actually get to the upside is to not focus on fear. We have to find out how, we have to use it and find out how to expand, our capabilities and, jobs with it. And that takes engagement. So we have to actually get in there and we can't be afraid what we're doing. We need to be prudent. There's a lot of things requiring prudence. But prudence and fear have a neurobiological difference.
Hmm. Okay. Um, I, there's a question I want to ask about AI, but then prudence and fear. Okay, let me double click on that a little bit. Because part of my work as a coach is to help people discern, right, that space between stimulus and response,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have a stimulus, and then there's 1,000 things you could do. There's the fear response, and there's the high self response. Out of the 1,000 in that moment, which one do you pick? So I was gonna ask you that later on, but since you brought it up, so what are some of the maybe data, quantitative or qualitative, can you discern as a human? Hey, this is coming from my lower self, fear, anxiety, worry. Oh, this is from my higher self, purpose, curiosity, passion, etc. So do you have anything to help
Yeah.
calculate this better?
Well, yeah. Well, I'd like to double click a little bit on prudence versus fear. So, what do you like? What's your favorite sport? What do you do? Are you a hiker? Do you hike?
My
Do you
favorite sport, yeah, I mean, yeah, body weight sports, things like that. Hike, yeah.
so you hike? So when you go on a hike, let's say you're going on an 8-hour hike, are you going to take water? Yeah. And are you going to take a snack?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe more than one snack.
Yep.
You'll probably take a flashlight and you make sure you have good shoes. And you make sure you have your phone and you make sure you have a battery pack. Because there's a lot of things that if you go on an 8-hour hike and you don't have any of that, you can have a bad hike, right? Um, but when we start that hike, are you afraid?
No.
You're prudent, because you're equipped. Um, and so that's really the difference between prudence versus fear. It's not, that I think there is some sort of there is going to be a regulatory element to AI and to how we deal with it. I think that transparency is going to need to be required. I think organizations are going to have to be responsible for their agents. If an agent tells you you can get a refund, but it's not the company policy, the company's going to have to honor the refund because it's their agent, and that has to be turned into law and precedent. Um, so there's things that have to happen. We need our backpack with our batteries and our snacks. We really need our snacks, and we need all of that. But there's a difference between that and fear. And so for me personally, to answer the personal question, how do I tell between when I'm going for my lower self or my higher self? A really I um I have an answer for that. So if you have old arguments, if you start hearing an old argument in your head, with people that you are no longer even maybe talking to, like from your, like if you replay an argument that's more than a year old, if you the other day I had something going on and I actually came up with like a full strategy on how I was going to. I had a little bit of frustration with United, but something else was going on. And I had this full strategy about how I was going to go on the dark net and buy United employee emails and send them my complaint letter
Oh my
about
gosh.
something that happened on United. But I was going to send
Mhm.
it to all of them. I think there's like 70,000 of them. And I was like, I'm going to do, that's a pattern. If you're making up like, complaint fantasies with United, about some righteous wrong, you're in a pattern. And so there's probably some fear, someplace. And so, or if you're using the word should, that's a good sign you're in a pattern. And so maybe it's not fear, but there's something that doesn't want to be felt. Um, and so I just, pay attention. I ask myself where I'm coming from. And I ask, I have 5 questions I ask myself. I ask, I turn inside and I ask, what is unsaid? What is undone? Um, what is unowned? Or what is unasked? And the difference between said and ask, said might boundary, and ask might be there's something I actually really want and I'm afraid to ask. And it's like vulnerability. So I ask those 4 questions. And if I have an unsaid and unasked and undone, um, or what was it? What was the other one? Anyway, because I said them in a different order. If I get an answer to any of those, then I do the thing.
Right.
So
If you get an answer, do the thing. Okay, got it. So you're essentially examining your blind spots, and then if an answer comes, you go and execute
yeah,
that.
so if I'm feeling chunky and I ask what's unsaid and I realize I haven't set a boundary, then I go set the boundary.
Mm.
Or if I'm feeling, something and I ask what is undone and I realize that I'm out of integrity. There's something I said I was going to do and I didn't do. I go do it. Or I go call the person and tell them that I can't do it, didn't do it. But, I own it. So I can get back into integrity. Um, so I go through that, and then the other thing I ask is I ask if there's a bridge that I can lay down, to someone else, because it's like we're all so lonely. The world is so lonely, and it's been my observation that if you lay down a bridge, people will pull across it. Like we're hungry for it, and so I'll see if I'm out of connection with myself or another person, or if I want more connection, then I will connect with myself or I'll connect with the other person.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Hmm.
Thank you. My auntie passed last year, and she was like my mom and like my bestie, and it was a really I learned a lot. I have a very specific life philosophy now.
Hmm. Is it public, shareable?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, it's pretty simple too. So I mean, the first thing is that no matter how much time you have less time to plan.
Mhm.
It just is that way. And so I learned that last year, for 2023, I had 2 people in my life. One, fighting the end, and another one fighting for a beginning. So one person was my auntie. She was 83 years old, and she ultimately died from heart failure. And
Mm.
she was extraordinary. She was, um, she racially integrated every school she went to. She was a math whiz. She was offered a full play physics scholarships in 1962. Like the black woman? No way. They wanted her to be a computer, you know? So she was brilliant, amazing, refused to be defined, um, and she wasn't done yet. We traveled all over the world. Like went to probably over 25 countries just together. And she wasn't done yet. And even at the end, she would, in the last couple of days, because I was with her, she wanted to stand up, and like the nurses like did not want her to stand up. But I was like, she wants to stand up, she gets to stand up. So I would go and I would like hold her, and hold her up so she could stand. And she wasn't done. And a lot of times people think about someone passing, they're sort of like, oh, well, they never did what they wanted to do. She did everything 2 to 3 times, and she still wasn't done. And then the other person who was my guru, was a 16-year-old boy who was hit by a car.
Mm.
And he was in a coma for 3 months. He's a son of a dear friend. And I just, this was a really good friend of mine. So I've watched him fight for his life, and now he can text his friends, you know, um, but like he has a long road. He's in, you know, he has a very, very long road ahead of him. He's fighting for it. He's fighting for that life. And so, no matter how much time you have less time than you plan. So I fully believe that when we live for 1,000 years, 999 years, on the 11th month, we're going to be like, oh, is it already over? And so with that, it's just that the time is precious. But I don't believe in time scarcity. I think that sets the wrong vibe. It's just a respecter of time. And so that means you don't waste it. And wasting it is like, all the stuff that, you and I do the work to get beyond. It's like wasting it is loving someone and not telling them. That's wasting time. You know, um, wasting it is not knowing the difference between pride and dignity. Dignity's yours. Pride's a farce. Pride's a waste of time. Dignity, that's special, and it's inherent. So that kind of thing. So that's one. The second part is that everybody's making it up as they go along. You kind of have to get of a certain age to realize this, but nobody knows what they're doing. And everyone holds a question. We're all making it up. And then also you get also to a certain age where you start to see the very, very best, like the top people of their game. They're able to bring their expertise and intelligence, the unique moment, and they don't plan it in advance. Like they're flowing into the moment, everything there. And so with all of that, everything else, they're still making it up at the very top of their game. So everybody's making it up as they go along. No one knows, no one's got it all figured out. Anyone who says it has an area in their life where they don't, and they're just like, they're either young, delusional, lying if they say they have it all figured out. The third one is that the best way to learn is by doing. Best way. Thank you for, congratulating me on us on closing the fund. And I've, been investing for about a year and a half, like actively. And I learned more in a year of investing than in the 6 years of getting ready to. So if you want to do it, learn it, just do it. And that's how you learn it. It's the best way to learn. And then it's about the journey, not the destination. Another thing that happens when you get older is that you see the people who are goal chasing are, for the most part, miserable, with failed marriages and relationships of all kinds. And so goals are important, so that so you know that you accomplished it, and for the measurement. But what they're really about is, it's about, does it change you to have the goal? Did you have to meet new people? Did you have to learn new things? Did you have to, the goals, it's really about the transformation. It's not about the goal. The goal has to be measurable, but it's not about the goal. It's about the transformation. And if you think it's about the goal, you're a hamster and it catches up. about the transformation, then you just experience more life. And since it's about the destination, what matters is how it feels. You know, do I feel alive? Do I feel connected? Um, you know, and you have the power to create how it feels. And the way I create how it feels, if it doesn't feel the way I want it to feel, then I do my 4 questions. You know, what's unsaid, unowned, undone, unasked, and then I put down a bridge. I do it, then I put down a bridge. And if that doesn't change the way it feels, then I give myself permission to leave. So I don't have to finish books. I don't have to stay to the end of the play. And I'm okay with relationships of all kinds ending. If I have owned, if I have owned myself, taken responsibility for myself, and I've, said, done, asked, um, owned, and laid down bridges, and it still doesn't feel right, then I'm out, and I have no issues with that. It's my life philosophy.
Mic drop. Nichol, I mean, that 10 minutes, 5 minutes is full of wisdom. And then how you open it up with your auntie, passing, really brings a question of what is a life well lived?
Yeah.
And that like that image that you shared, like at 80 something at the end of life, she wants to freaking stand up. There's human dignity, there's that sovereignty, there's the willpower,
Yeah.
like it's a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you for asking. I miss her every day, like every single day. I miss her.
Well, she's with you through this
Yeah.
story, then she's with us. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for bringing her to this space.
Thank you.
I mean, ultimately, it's not about the duration of our life, right? Yeah, 1,000 years. If you live 1,000 years watching Netflix, you kind of waste, you kind of wasted. In my opinion, no judgment, but in my opinion, it's kind of wasted. But it really going after it, really hone that sovereignty and agency. Hey, I wanted to bring, equality into the education system. Let me go after it. I want to build, trans that community and invest in, technology of well-being and hardware, even though everyone says like, yeah, you can't fund that stuff, right? You were doing it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like you know, I guess um I think it's all about I think in the end it's about how it felt, like, and were we connected, and um did we love, were we loved, did we experience that, um and recognizing it's precious.
So on that note,
Mm-hmm.
coming back to tech, right?
Mm-hmm.
The way I see trans tech right now as it is with building conditions, whether it's, heart rate variability or breath work or aura ring or, vibration device like Apollo. All these are beautiful and great. It helps us bring more awareness to that micro moment of the decision, right? Hey, I want to get up. How do I get up with dignity? Hey,
Mm-hmm.
or excuse me, I have an impulse to write a nasty email to,
United.
70,000. Yeah, right? Like, is this the right thing to do, right? Because in that, I mean, that's a very human thing. Because there's revenge
Mm-hmm.
fantasy, right, of those that cut us off or made us
Mm-hmm.
wrong or whatever. So thank you for sharing that. It's a human thing to do, right? Are
Yeah.
there are there no, I'm serious. Are there data, qualitative or quantitative, that can help us bring more awareness to like, well, do you really want to write that email to 70,000 of United employees? So one, I'll share something personal that I
Yeah.
so I made a ChatGPT bot
Mm.
to check my blind spots. Like, here are
Oh,
the
that's
things I'm thinking
interesting.
about, da da da. Tell me if there's anything I'm missing. And so that helps me, right? Similar to your four questions, to consider like, hey, are there things that you hadn't considered? Like, oh,
How,
okay.
so how has it been for you? Like, have you, by using this bot, have you um, seen blind spots that you had missed?
Um, so most of the blind spots, I disagree. Like, oh yeah, I can't remember what was the last thing, so I have to look it up. But so it's like, ah, that's okay, that's okay, that's okay, that's okay. So then go ahead and do that, right? So I'm trying to get to full awareness. It's
Mm,
like a tiny step towards that. And obviously it takes cultivation, and for me it's ayahuasca and meditation and breath work, all
mhm.
these things that we all do to bring that awareness. But I'm hoping that technology can help me see even more that I hadn't considered.
Mhm.
Anyways.
No, I love that. It's sort of like, can you like, was there anything that you agreed with and you hadn't seen yet? I think that's a beautiful use case, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Like, was there anything when you did the blind spot bot where you were like, oh yeah, I missed that, and you're like, oh, that's good. I'm glad it raised that.
um I think there was a couple minor ones
Uh-huh.
are passable enough, where they say something about, again, I can't off the top of my head tell you
Okay.
exactly the specific case, but I do a lot of, let's say, LinkedIn post
Hmm.
or TikTok videos, because I'm a coach. I make content, as a way to share these tools with people. So often, one of the blind spots, quote unquote, the ChatGPT will tell me is, have you consider other viewpoints? Is this is very one-dimensional? Well, yes, because if I start to be nuanced, then the signal gets lost in the
Hmm.
nuance, right? So I can't. So it's like, yes, I get it, but it's okay. This is exactly, I want to be as not
That's
forceful, but
great.
potent as
Oh,
possible.
but it's great. It makes it ensures that your potency is a choice and not autopilot. And that's really a beautiful thing. I have a friend who's working on he has a thing called Public Editor. And basically what it is it's like an overlay. You download it onto your browser. And basically what it does is it points out on any web page you're on um, that's using the text with cognitive biases. So it'll
Mm,
say, oh, this is an anchor. This is a persuasive tool. This
mm.
is appealing to authority. This is appealing to your insecurity. This is a, it
Wow.
basically has like a layer on top. So you're like, ah, you know?
It could be quite overwhelming to be the user of the
True,
tool.
true. It's interesting. It's funny. So I spent, for a variety of different reasons, I've been exposed to a lot of sort of, uh, you know, content around sales funnels. So I recognize a sales process, you know, and I'm the kind of person that when I want something, I want it. I'm very thoughtful about what I want, and I'm very methodical. And so when I show up at your store, I want it, like I already know. and um, and so I always get frustrated when someone starts to do a sales process on me. I'm like, don't. just like take my money. Like I've already done all this on my own. Um, so, so having like, yeah. Anyway, sorry, that was a tangent. But
No. I
I
mean,
love,
it's actually on point because what we're talking about is how do we use technology to hone our agency, sovereignty,
yeah,
etc. Right? So you had shared this. There's this tool to help you see the persuasive techniques, and you're someone who is a buyer, is a buyer, is a buyer. So when you show up, you're ready to go. No, you know, any additional sales or marketing, it's gonna most likely talk you out of the
it becomes
desire.
the anti-sale. I'm
Yeah,
like, you're
exactly.
just not ready.
Yeah. So are there other
Yeah.
tools that you come across that's, helping us be more sovereign in?
Well, I mean, I think I mean, kind of like I've done much of the same of what you've done. It's like when you do, when all of the different things that you do that give you a moment to recognize. I guess the most important thing. Oh, let me think. Um, what I have now, which I did not have a decade ago, is I have the ability to see a thought. I have the ability to see a thought and to know. Um, I have the ability to see a thought. I have the ability to feel an emotion. Um, and I have the ability to know when I'm in a pattern. I might always know it at the beginning, but I can figure it out pretty soon, um, either based on how I'm feeling or what I'm thinking. And then, I have the ability to ask the questions that allow, and the curiosity and the interest to not be in the pattern. So I ask the questions that allow me to find out what's really going on, and then I can address whatever that is, and that bring me more joy. And right now there aren't a lot of tools. It's sort of like right now we're all kind of using a combination of tools. Where you probably see the biggest intersection is that, if you haven't slept and you're dehydrated and a lot of the wellness and well-being things, then it's really hard to have the mental space to notice patterns. So a lot of the wellness tech, lower level transformative tech, it gets at the kind of like health in the body that gives you buffer. So there's that. Now we're at the beginning of things like what you did, um, your blind spot bot, or Tyler Vanderweel at UPenn. They did a thing where they had therapy patients record stream of consciousness for 2 days. And typically a therapist,
Wait, how did they do that?
just in the audio.
Oh, I see, just
Yeah. And
audible.
then they
Okay.
took the audio files and they um, used ChatGPT, a trained version, to establish narrative profiles. And, in the train to become a therapist, therapists estimate that they spend 2 to 3 sessions establishing a narrative profile um, before they can really begin to start helping you, because they have to like understand all the pieces, the family constellation and everything else. And so they created these narrative profiles and shared them with the therapist and the patients, and both of those people felt like it was pretty accurate. So I think we're at the beginnings of being able to have conversational interfaces that allow us to see our blind spots, um, our like this would be a really good one. I have a friend. We should like. I have a friend who always deflects compliments, always. And so I told him we were talking about this. I saw him a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about this, and he was like, "Okay." And then 9 hours later, we were in a conversation, and someone complimented him, and he downplayed it. And I was across the table, and I was like, "There's the thing. You just did the thing." It would be so useful to him to have a bot
Yeah, like a
Yeah,
reminder, right? Like ding, like Pavlov's talk about reverse, right? Like, hey, ding, you just did a thing, you know,
yeah, yeah.
bring
Like, oh, you
awareness
just did
to
the
the,
thing.
mm,
Someone gave you a compliment and you just rebuffed it. Like it's fully capable of doing that right now.
yeah. Hmm, I like it. Um, okay, so segue to a little bit more of what you're doing professionally right now. You had
Mm.
mentioned public ways acknowledge that some investors want founders to be broken. So
Yeah.
then they are more driven. I actually talked to an investor. I won't name names, but he said exactly that. Because what I do is help founders to be more sovereign and agent, yeah, have more agency and healthy, and so they can be on purpose. And he was like, well, we don't, we want them to be broken. Literally exactly the word he used. So then they're more motivated. It's like, oh wow, that's a perspective I'd never considered. Anyways, so
That is the secret. They don't say that, but a lot of them, and you know why? They're kind of broken. I mean, in the sense like here's the thing. It's kind of like what I did in my talk is that um and it was that the broken founders um can't succeed in hyper speed. It's kind of like, it's going so fast. Like one of the things that James Courier said is like, if you're an AI founder, you cannot be broken. You do not have the time for that because it's so fast. The system can't absorb your mommy daddy issues. Like it can't. Um, and it doesn't mean you have to be over your mommy daddy issues to start a company, but you have to be aware of them and you have to like ask your co-founders to help you because you're all like everyone's, that like we all have things that we come through life with, but we don't have to do them alone. And we can learn skills and tools and we can do it together. And then you have like this amazing team. But it's like the speed, this hyper speed that we're going into, faster than ever. Um, you know, uh, um, a mommy daddy issue mistake can cost you your company
yep,
in weeks.
yep, yep. Nassim Taleb's term anti-fragile came to mind, right? It's very
Mm,
fragile to have someone who has mommy daddy issues, that inevitably saboteurs their relationships, their health, maybe even their company because of a split second decision like, I mean, indulge in my, revenge fantasy towards this editor, whatever, whatever, right? So I
you
mean,
know,
it's just, this is true.
yeah.
It's like they make like, I mean, anyways.
Or like not even that far out. It's like, um, whatever someone's doing to someone else, they're doing that to themselves as well. And so, if you're, not being trustworthy, like if you're not saying what's going on for you, because you don't trust the people that you're working with can handle like what's really happening, then you aren't being trustworthy. You think that it's like the other way around. So all of it's happening and a company is when a group of strange people go on a strange journey to a strange land. And when those people are aligned, they can do anything. And so, like, all of these little things that people do, it doesn't even have to be as big as, like, you know, um, stealing from a competitor. It could easily just be like the little stabs that you do to your head of product every day because he reminds you of your brother.
Yeah.
Or the football player who like didn't respect you, so you stab your head of product every day.
So,
um
so inside of that, so now that you are an investor,
uh-huh.
how do you look at, because, obviously, like any relationships, any human, none of us are perfect, right? We don't walk on water. So how do you think about, well, evaluating founders, but founding teams and products, so on, so on, so on?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a big red flag is if someone is defensive. You know, like founder certainty is does not equal defensiveness. You know, like if someone's not, you know, really like if you say something that they disagree with and they're not like, oh, tell me about it. You know, like I have a friend who is an amazing founder, and she was you know, she was, you know, pitching a group of investors, and you know, and it was in another country, and they were really surprised that she was a she, and she did not get flustered by that. They also had a lot of like point of view about her business and the sector she was in, and so she took out her pencil and she was like, "Oh, so you don't think that this business will work? Tell me all the reasons why." You know, and so she just like used every moment as a learning opportunity. Um, you know, and so you know when a founder is defensive and isn't curious about like, oh, you think that that's not good? Why? Tell me. You know, versus well, we're certain it's this and this and this and this. It's like, well, then you don't need to talk to me because you're already certain. Um, that's a real sign because even if I'm wrong, even if I'm absolutely wrong, if a person is defensive to me, who they don't even know, then they are so much more defensive to their team. And that
Mm,
means that they cannot leave that team.
mm, beautiful. So do you, since you're, all about actualizing human potential, is there a role that you play to maybe gently or maybe not so gently nudge them to like, hey, do this, do that, do this at meditation retreat or that's like outside of the
No, I mean,
responsibility as a
well, so we do pre-seed and seed, so they're just getting started, and um, you know, and you know, so you know, anyone like the people that we've invested in, they're all people who are super curious, and you know, and they have very strong points of view, but they're always open for input, um, and so you know, there's that. And then just in general, you know, I've always been an advocate that, um, you know, the way to be a great leader is to become the very best version of yourself you can be, and to continue to do that inner journey. I mean, work, if you allow it to be, is a spiritual journey because that's where the people are, you know? So, um, you know, I think being a yogi in a cave is actually quite easy, especially with DoorDash. You know,
Yep.
especially with DoorDash, you know, very few people have it like Milrepa and, you know, turn green from nettle soup. So, um, you know, it's being with the people that is the, you know, is the challenge. So if we just continue the rationale is just to continue to do the work. And, you know, like nowadays it's interesting, like my work, I work a lot, but it feels like I'm playing. I'm just having so much fun. I'm having so much fun.
That's a good sign that you're on the
Yeah,
right path. That's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Bradford told me this. Yeah, I didn't know this about you. I'm actually going to Joe Dispenza's work this coming week.
So fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm actually curious. You're a technologist, you're a futurist, you also did Dr. Joe's work. How do you see the potential of productizing, right, this type of mystical experiences for human transformation, if it's possible at all?
What do
Like,
you
what's
do you
your
mean? Do you differentiate like what do you mean by productizing?
Yeah,
Is
because
the right
that's
question.
that's an experience, right? He essentially took some ancient meditation techniques and modernized it, translate it so then modern people can like
Hmm.
get it, right, without reading all the ancient texts and stuff. And that in
Hmm.
itself is an experience, right? So are there tech or a product that can package that to make that even more accessible to more people?
Well,
And actually, so that's a very specific question, but also I'm curious to know your take on it, since you took it, I haven't taken it yet. What was your
oh, I
experience?
love it. I love
Yeah.
it. It's really fantastic. I I love it, you know. And it turns out that you know, the Kundalini stuff works really well for me. Um, and I'd never tried it before. And it's
Hmm.
not pure Kundalini, but it is sort of like the energy. It's an energetic style of meditation,
Hmm.
and it works really well for me. So I enjoy it a great deal. I mean, I do believe in different things for different people, and also different combinations of things. I mean, my overall point of view is I think we're going to have to use old tools, new tools, technology. I think there's a lot of things that we're going to have to use to get as many people into a state of inner and outer health as quickly as we can. Like one of the things I'm really excited about is I am so excited about the biome. I am
Hmm.
so excited about the gut biome. I think that, I think that we're going to find, like the bulk of your serotonin is made in your gut. You can't be happy without serotonin. Like you can't. Um, and so, our ability eventually to use food and targeted strains to support human
Mm.
psychological health.
Mm.
There's a whole bunch of people, and then there's things like there's a whole bunch of people who, SSRIs are very, they're very imprecise. Sort of like they hit the whole brain, they hit the whole system, um, and they're not targeted. So we're going to be using technology to develop targeted solutions. And then there's a bunch of people, there's a bunch of people who, I think have gut biome disturbances or hormonal disturbances. And I'm not talking about some sort of woo woo biohacking kind of thing. I'm talking about like legitimate, issues. And, um, and, we're going to be able to address uh, many of their issues through food or through engineered fermentations
Mm.
that are deliberate, or through isolated um, microbial strains.
Mm.
And so we're coming into a place where there's a physical dimension around health and healing, around nutrition and hydration, and a bunch of things that are sort of like the foundation for your cognitive and spiritual athleticism. Then there's a whole other thing about like really training people to have the skills and capacities in order to connect deeply with themselves and with one another. Like there isn't any reason why, like the four questions that I ask, there isn't any reason why when I get upset, I can't have a little interface that says, what is unowned? What haven't you owned? What haven't you asked? What haven't you said? What haven't you done? Like easy. It's basically a sort of like a quasi spiritual CBT, you know?
I mean, Byron Katie made a whole career out of four questions. I don't see why,
Absolutely.
I
And
don't
so
see
it's
why
like,
not.
these generative things are great for it when you don't have a friend or when you can't do it on your own. At this point, like I've done so much work. I can super quickly run through my system and like see where I'm at. Like now I do growth work for fun. I mean, I'm still working things, but like now it's not because I have like, giant buildings on fire. It's just more like I enjoy transformation more than anything. Like I love it. Um, and I love to see it in myself, and I love to see it in other people too. And I love my freedom. I love your freedom. Um, and so then there's lots of ways to use technology for that. Um, and then there will always be the ineffable, always, and we should keep it that way. We should always have the mysteries, and we should always have the ineffable. I just believe that we can use science and technology to take the part of the mysteries that are not actually that mysterious But we just don't know it because we haven't been able to see it. Like there's this guy, have you heard of this guy, Michael Levin?
No.
Oh,
What was that?
people think that he's probably going to get a Nobel Prize, like, because basically what he's doing is, like when I tell you this, it's just gonna, so basically it's sort of like, and the spiritual people, when they hear this, they're like, yeah, we knew this already, but we didn't really have the science for it. So essentially, his theory is that um, the intelligence of our bodies is not in the DNA. So there's a period of time where everyone thought, oh, if you knew the DNA, then the DNA would tell you everything. And then after that, there was a chapter where people were like, well, it's not the DNA, it's the RNA. It's the RNA that's telling the DNA what to do. This guy's like, it's not the DNA, it's not the RNA, it's not any sort of, chemical signal from cell to cell. It's actually an electrical signal that moves between cells, a frequency between cells that tells all the cells what to do, and that's how they communicate. And that turns biology on its head. And the proof that they have of this, like some of the things they've done, two main things. One, if you take a worm, they're called planarians, and you slice them. If you have a tail and a head, and you slice them 3 pieces, the tail will grow a head, the middle part will grow a head and a tail, and the head will grow a tail. What they've done is they take electrical frequency and they basically like move it through the cells or through the segment, and they can get a segment. They can get like the middle part, instead of growing a head and a tail, they can get it to grow 2 heads.
Oh.
Over and over and over again. But what's crazy is after you get it to grow 2 heads, when it has a baby, it has a 2-headed baby, and you don't have to repeat it. So it's a permanent read write to the cellular structure
Wow.
of the worm.
That's wild.
It's frequency. Basically like sound. Unbelievable. And then so on cancer, they've been doing early stuff on cancer, and basically, his theory is that, we didn't, the way humans think, like we didn't, I mean, maybe we come from someplace else, but um, our bodies were built up. So they started out by little organisms, which is why it's like the dominant species on the planet is bacteria and viruses. It's the microbacteria. Like we think we're the dominant, like everything inside of us, like everything works because of microbes. And so, like, in the soup, in our oceans, there were groups of microbes, um, and they started hanging out together because it was beneficial and advantageous. And they started communicating, oh, you can hang out with me. But they didn't have brains, and all they had was mouths and vibrations. And then those eventually turned into what we call cells, like all the mitochondria. Like people think that initially all this stuff was separate, and then it came together. And so it's got this ability to communicate, that doesn't require a brain. And so what they've been doing with cancer cells is basically pulsing the sound of non-cancer cell to a cancer cell. And it
What?
stops behaving that way. There's this amazing TED talk where he's with
Wow.
Chris Anderson, and Chris Anderson's like you can watch his brain break because it changes our knowledge of biology. It's actually the signaling between cells. So people are thinking, oh, well, longevity might be in that, because then you would basically just say, this is what a young body sounds like. What a young cell sounds like,
Mm.
and you basically 2-headed planaria it. Amazing.
That's so
Amazing.
interesting.
I'm sorry, that
Wow.
was a tangent.
No, this is
Got this.
exciting. I mean, the beautiful thing about podcasts, I'm always looking for paradigm shifting ideas, right? So thank you for
Yeah,
sharing your paradigm shifting
yeah,
idea.
no, that's it. But how it comes back to, you know, um, human consciousness and what's possible for us, and what are the what are the tools that give us a moment to, know where we're coming from, our lower, our higher selves. I think we're just at the very beginning. Um, and It's exciting.
Yeah. Well, there is a quote. Nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come.
Mm.
So, you're a connoisseur of ideas and technologies, and this could be the last question. Like, what ideas do you believe are just ripening and ready to profoundly impact how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to others, how we relate to, humanity?
I am on fire about collective human superintelligence. That's the
That's a mouthful. First, can you
whew,
define what that is? And
yeah.
then before you
So
go into more?
basically, it's like we really haven't developed wide scale coordination mechanisms for ourselves that allow us to really collaborate and coordinate together at scale. And so, you know, when we remember the moments when you've been in group flow or when you actually have a group mind, and group minds are different than group thinks. Like a group mind is infinitely intelligent. Like I remember the early alternate reality games where people would think they had 6 months of content. Um, it's like giant, you know, puzzle mystery games that were online and off. This was like 15
Wait,
years ago.
back up. I'm not a gamer, so say
So
more
there
about
used to
that.
be there used to be these games called alternate reality games,
Uh-huh.
and they were online and off. So there might be a puzzle clue on a website and another one in a phone booth in downtown Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And they were, a lot of women played them. It was like 50-50. Um, and they sort of like started to rise up with the internet. And um, what started to happen is that people started to play them collectively. So if you had a clue that was written in Sanskrit, then someone who was near the university with the foremost expert in Sanskrit in the US would go and get that person and get them to play the game. And so what happened is that um, the hive, and the hive doesn't really sort of capture it because that's more, like a single, you know, it doesn't sort of like express the individuality. Um, but the group collectively would solve puzzles, in days, because everyone would like bring their intelligence to bear. And so we haven't found a way to do that with technology towards a shared goal, towards a shared outcome. Um, and right now, like we spent, I think AI is amazing, but I also think we're way too charmed by it, in the sense that, we neglect ourselves. And we haven't spent a lot of time thinking about how do we enhance our intelligence, and our collective intelligence. It's like one of the things that's happening with all these LLMs that people are not really paying attention to is it's sort of like, basically you have millions of little hairless monkeys, banging on them and seeing what we can do. Like that is like, but we're all sort of like one to it, so we're all in like one-to-one relationships, even though it's like swirling the pot on the back end and learning from all of us. What we haven't done is you know, we haven't developed um, the technology, and we're going to have to use AI to do it, that allows us to be collective intelligence with one another, to network ourselves together. And
Mm.
so people do it in small, jazz bands do it. They're networked in that moment, connected. They have a group mind. It's a group feeling. Um, but we haven't done it. And so I think, what we should do is we should learn how to develop that collective network between us. And and I think it's going to require getting really human. I think you're going to have to you're going to have to collaborate means you've addressed a certain amount of your ego. Like if you think that you're the only one, then you can't collaborate. So there's some personal work that's required, and then there's a technology underpinning that's required. And and it's like that game Folded. So Folded is a collective protein folding game where everybody can watch everybody else fold the protein, and they've they found ways to fold proteins that scientists working on the same problem for decades hadn't been able to solve, and they solved it in a few weeks of doing it collectively. People all over the world watching one another play the game, and it was a collective goal. So how do we institutionalize and operationalize that? And who do we have to be in order to join into a collective superintelligence for the times that we need it? Like when we have a problem to solve, how do we do that? There's some people who are doing some cool stuff. It's just getting started. As you can imagine, there's a lot of democracy tech people who are involved in that. But it's like, I think that's the question of the day.
Well, I mean, I do have some follow-up question. I mean, you are a game, I don't even know how to, the term for it, a game expert, architect, designer.
No, I've been around a lot of games because I've worked in every department in a game company.
So in many of your talks, you had talked about games are the ultimate transformation medium, right? So as such, the way I would articulate is transformational container, right? In any kind of container, there's objective, there are the parameters, here are the rules of the universe, and then here's how you ascend, increase your status, your scores, and so forth and go, right? So if you believe that, then and you want a game or games of collective intelligence, then requires incentive structure and status and these type of components.
I mean, maybe not. I mean, it just sort of like we already synchronize our biology. Like there's a whole bunch of things that happen when people are aligned. It's called biosynchrony. It's not a it's a real thing. It's like birth rate. It's like it's a real thing. And so we already have the ability to go into sync. We already sync, but we do it sort of haphazardly, and we haven't applied technology to allow us to sync at scale. And I think when we sync at scale, especially around the principles of group mind versus group think, I think there isn't a problem that we can't solve. I think that 8 billion crafty humans, is a force to be reckoned with, and I think we owe it to ourselves to develop ourselves for that. And I'm gonna have to go.
Of course. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you. Thank you. Appreciate you.
So nice to talk to you. Thank you so much for your patience too.
Of course. Enjoy the rest of your day, Nichol. Thank you so much.